have a guest commentator with me for the rest of the program who will be giving his thoughts on the news and issues of the day. He's a current affairs analyst and professor of communications at Baze University right here in Abuja. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, thank you so much. Good to see you on Prime Time.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'm sure you've had your ears very full from the conversations we've had so far. Let's start from the latter part of the show tonight. You heard Senator Musili Obanekoro actually more or less put the blame, maybe not entirely, but at the at the doorstep of Nigerian banks, contributing to where the economy is at.
I think he said all the right things, by the way. But first of all, I think it's also good that it's coming back into the public space. We used to hear much of him those days, but it seems to he went into the cooler, in parentheses, for some time. But it's also good to see that he's coming back to contribute to
national discourse,
national conversation, as the case could be, especially at this time of different challenges. So welcome development. Well, again, on the points that he raised, it's not out of the world for us to understand that the problems are multiple. Every sector has a hand, in what we are experiencing in terms of their negative contribution. And it's okay if we identify the banks, but as much as we're going to identify the banks, there are also the questions of individual or citizen attitude, to the concept of Nigeria, if we want to take it away from how we understand it as a country. Our disposition to the nation state is a problematic and dangerous one. There's no faith in the system. Oftentimes we talk about the absence of patriotism, the lack of nationalism. It is worsening, and we are seeing it in evidence in the way we relate to Nigerian symbols. The faith we have in the Nigerian symbols, the Naira, for instance. Everybody seems to be hedging funds and seems to be saving funds in hard currency, hoarding monies, because even the institutions, we also lack faith in them. Hardly will you see funds in banks anymore from evidence that we see around, or from reports, believable reports. People now think that they should rather keep the funds in their homes, and when they do that, it serves no economic value, puts more pressure on the Naira, and of course, it's culminating into the many problems that we are seeing now.
What you're saying, if I hear you correctly, is that there's no Nigerian actually can excuse themselves from the rot that we find. Because I recall in an interview with the senior advocate of Nigeria, Kutekba, who said, look, Nigeria is the way it is because of the way we are. So we say one thing, in public, but what we do in private is what actually rubs off on the nation and is reflecting. I mean, you heard the president weeks ago say, look, Nigerians need to begin to think right about Nigeria. He actually said he brought out the called for the national pledge, and he thinks Nigerians need to begin to give real meaning to the national pledge, pledging to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest.
It's not about, it's not so much about being able to mouth the pledge, being able to parrot it, sing the national anthem, and of course, once you sing it, then it ends there. What follows after the recitation of the pledge, what action do you invest or do you put into the becoming of the Nigerian state that you call your own? Those actions are actually what the problem is. The high level of faithlessness. And that's why we're talking about the need for value orientation, value change, a trust in the system. But again, this cannot happen in a vacuum. It has it can happen only through the exemplification of the traits or the values of doing things rightly, as can be demonstrated in leadership. Leadership has a major role to play, and when we're talking about leadership here, we're going to say this for the umpteenth time. It shouldn't be individualized or individuated. It can be far more than that. Because it's not just one leader that can bring about change. Multiple sets of leaders in all their corners, in all their little or big corners.
But there seems to be a level of
reflecting some of these values that we talk about as embedded in the national anthems.
Yeah, but there seems to be a level of irresponsibility, pardon my use of that word, when it comes to people in leadership. I mean, you have a situation where ministries, departments, and agencies are owing the electricity companies, almost running them out of business. They are the ones that are supposed to set the right example.
That's right. I mean, it's one of the things that it's one of the things. And I listened to Professor Patriotism this morning. He was also saying as the big problem we have with our economy now can be resolved, you know, with proper management, and which leads again to the question of leadership. You know, you see policy pronouncements, you know, about to lead us to right policy directions, but you know we are short on implementation. You know, otherwise, if some of these policies are aligned in the wake of the removal of subsidy or in the wake of freeing the naira, you know, if they've been implemented to cushion the pain on the citizens, you know, of course, we wouldn't be talking about food crisis or hardship on the citizens the way we are talking about it now. We'll have seen some practical, we'll see some evidence, some mitigations of the pain. But of course, pronouncements are made, you know, maybe some attempts will be made at implementation, but no sooner will we have as soon as we start those those attempts, you see circumvention, you know, by citizens, same set of citizens. And of course, Senator Musili Obanikoro cited the example of his businesses, you know, that was sabotaged by citizens, not government. You know, citizens, you know, working against citizens. But how do we help the situation? Again, it comes back to the question of leadership. Sometimes citizens simply need to be directed. Exactly. And when they are not properly directed, you know, when they see poor leadership, they just think then that they have nothing to ape or idolize. You know, so if leaders can be responsible, why would you expect me to bail the cats? And that's the, you know, that's the problem that we have, really. It
is a major problem. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, the Baze University, thank you so much for joining us and, you know, topping this like icing on the cake. Well, that's it for this edition of Rise Prime Time. Do join us again tomorrow. From me, Ngozi Alebu, and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.